Cheap home loans are here. Hey everyone, it's Wolfgang. This is an important topic. A lot of people are starting to look at the housing market because prices are still low. There have not been tons of buyers who have jumped back into the market and mortgage rates have dropped. So let's take a look at this. Because it wasn't that long ago, we had mortgage rates of 7.8% and 7.1% recently. We had 7.8% mortgages at the end of 2023. We had 7.1% mortgage interest rates at the start of this year, January 25, 7.1%. So you have to imagine a lot of people took out home loans with those interest rates. And especially the 7.8%, that's almost 8% for a home loan. That's pretty high. And the difference between a 3% mortgage and a 7% mortgage, just to give you an idea, $1,000 more per month for the 7% mortgage. So if you're one of those folks who has a 3% mortgage, congratulations. Because compared to the people with the 7.8% mortgage or the 7.1% mortgage that was available at the start of this year, you're paying more than $1,000 more per month for your mortgage payment. That's quite a difference, right? So the good news, the home loan for 30-year fixed right now has dropped significantly, down to 6.25%. Huge drop, right? Especially from the 7.8% mortgage interest rate. Rates have not been this low for over 1 year. Okay, so what that will do to buyer psychology is a lot of people will start looking at the housing market. And the reason is probably obvious, because now that rates are starting to drop, people know that other people are going to start looking to buy, and that will have upward pressure on home prices. So if you have already bought a home and you have a 7.8% loan, there's two ways that you can lower your monthly payment. One of them is pretty dramatic. Okay, you can refinance your 7.8% mortgage down to the current rate of 6.25% for a 30-year loan. That's a big drop. Or you can refinance to a 15-year fixed rate loan. That's feasible if you have, a very reasonably priced home, or if you have a high income. So let's take a look at the cheapest mortgage now. The 15-year fixed rate mortgage has dropped to about 5.5%. Wow. Compared to 7.8%, if you have a lower priced home, or if you're a wealthy person and you bought with a 7.8% mortgage, this is very attractive. That's more than 2 percentage point drop in the home loan rate. If your home is a relatively low cost home, and I'm going to give you some ideas of where to find those. 5.5% is looking pretty good for a 15-year fixed rate loan. You pay off the loan faster, obviously. And like I said, it's great for a smaller home purchase, or a home purchase that was made in a region where home prices are more reasonable. Because right now, the average home price, the median home price in the United States is about $440,000 across the United States. But you can find homes for sale for under $200,000. And I'll give you a couple of areas where you can do that in just a couple of seconds here. Okay, so the 15-year fixed rate loan is the cheapest. Obviously, the 30-year fixed is at a low, a 1 year low. If you buy in an affordable region, you can save a lot of money. Okay, so why did rates drop like this? Why have rates fallen? Well, the story is this: home loan interest rates are tied to the 10-year Treasury bond interest rate. The 10-year Treasury bond interest rate is sort of the foundation for mortgage loan interest rates. And the 10-year Treasury interest rates have started falling. They started falling because there was a hint that the Fed was going to lower rates, right? So what were the hints that the Fed would start having to lower interest rates? It's because of the 911,000 vaporware non-existing jobs. There was an announcement that 911,000 jobs were never created. And so that it became obvious that the labor market was weak. And so because of that, that was the hint to the bond market that the Fed was going to have to start lowering interest rates. So the 10-year Treasury rate started falling. That lowered the rate for mortgages. We're down to 6.25%. Rates have not been this low for over a year. Okay, so I couldn't fit everything on the board here. So do we have indications that interest rates for home loans will keep dropping? Yes, we do. The Fed has announced that they are on an interest rate lowering cycle. There are 2 more Fed meetings for 2025. There's an expectation the Fed will lower interest rates at both of those. Again, because the job market is soft. And the Fed has a dual mandate. They need to support the job market. That's one of their main mandates. The other mandate is inflation, but inflation has leveled off. The job market took this horrendous hit. So the Fed will start addressing the labor market problem. Right now, almost 26% of unemployed U.S. residents have been without a job for over 6 months. That's long-term unemployed. That's the highest in years. About 26% of people without a job have been jobless for over 6 months, collecting unemployment benefits. That's the highest in years. So that's a problem. So the Fed will have to lower interest rates, most likely, unless something very unusual happens. They will lower interest rates twice more this year, probably a quarter point each time for the next 2 meetings, one in October, one in December. And then in early 2026, they will lower interest rates again. So let's see here. The most affordable places to buy a home. I said that I would give you a couple options where, because the national average home price is like $440,000. Can you buy a home for much less than that? Yes, you can. And this is great if you have a job that is a work from home type of job. You have some flexibility as to where you live, right? So if you are in the mood or in the market for a place to buy a home, West Virginia, the average home price in West Virginia, $147,000. Wow, $147,000 for an average home in Virginia. Compare that to a $440,000 for the national average. So West Virginia, $147,000 is the average home price. Mississippi, $181,000 is the average home price. Louisiana, $201,000 is the average home price. That sounds pretty good compared to the national average of $440,000. If you have a career where working from home is normal or feasible, you can take a look at those states: West Virginia, Mississippi, Louisiana. So I think the biggest issue is if you have one of these higher interest rate loans, 7.8% or somewhere north of 7%, you're going to have to start paying attention to interest rates and considering refinancing. I mean, if you have a relatively lower cost home, this 15-year fixed, this is going to keep dropping. It's 5.5% now. It's going to keep dropping. It will possibly get below 5% at some point. At that point, if you're looking at a 4.9 something percent loan for 15 years and you have an affordable home, that's going to be hard to ignore, really hard to ignore, because we're on an interest rate lowering cycle from the Fed. So relatively cheap home loans are here. Now, I want to say something about the 3% loans, 2.5% if you got very fortunate. You have to put that into context. The people who got those loans, the 3%, the 2.75%, 2.5% loans, that was during a time when interest rates were artificially low historically. And they were artificially low because the Fed was trying to help the U.S. recover from the 2008-2009 housing collapse. Okay, so those rates are probably not going to return. So 6.25% now looks really good. This rate is going to be below 6% come next year. Early 2026, I would not be at all surprised to see the 30-year fixed rate interest, the 30-year loan interest rate for a fixed rate 30-year loan to be 5.75%, 5.5%. It's really going to get meaty. And when that happens, if you already own your home, great. If you haven't bought a home yet, people are going to start jumping into the market because people know that the 3% loans are not really attainable anymore. That was an unusual situation when the Fed had kept rates very low for a very long time because of the 2008-9 crash. This is looking pretty good historically. When my wife and I started buying property, we paid 9% plus, interest rate for an interest rate. And we had heard at that time, there was a time in the 70s, I think it was, when interest rates were like 18, 19%. And so 9% seemed pretty good. 6.25%, we would have, gone to great lengths to get that kind of a low rate. This is going to keep dropping. If you're not ready to buy yet, keep an eye on the 30-year fixed rate interest. Keep an eye on the 15-year fixed rate loan interest. And it might be time to jump in and buy a new home at the end of this year or the beginning of next year. If you have any questions about this, please ask questions in the comments. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions you have. And I really want to thank everyone for watching, and have a great day.